All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm very excited to introduce you to our session featuring Arium, a new 3D video chat platform. Arium is a browser-based platform for building, sharing, and attending 3D exhibition spaces with spatial video chat, founded by CEO Aidan Nelson and CTO Dan Oved. So they've worked with many organizations such as CultureHub, SeoulArts LaMaMa Umbria, MIT Media Lab for the Ars Electronica Festival, and the Caribbean Fine Art Fair, and other educational and creative organizations. So today we'll hear more about the design of this platform and then have the opportunity to go into their space and experience it firsthand. So now I will hand things over to Aidan and Dan.
Thanks, Angela. Thank you all for being here. I think we can be pretty casual about this. I do have a deck because I'm a teacher, but if you have any questions or if you want to hop in and unmute yourself and make some comments, that's totally fine. I guess to start off, I would personally be curious what brought you all here. If it was something about the description, if you come to Venture Cafe every week, if it's if you're interested in video or spatial applications, or if you have anything you want to share about that now or throughout this session, feel free to unmute yourself or throw it in the chat. But without further ado, let me go ahead and add my deck. Okay, so I'm Aidan Nelson, and with me today is Dan Oved, and we are hoping to, with our venture Arium, bring human connection to virtual exhibitions. So for a little bit about our background, I've spent most of my professional career in theater in one capacity or another, not in technology. I've worked in theater production, in arts education, worked as a teacher at the elementary school, middle school, college, graduate level. So I've sort of been around theater, performance, and education for quite some time. And specifically been around arts technology within that space. And Dan, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. I've been, I guess, programming for a long time. I got into the creative things more recently, but I've been building a lot of interactive web applications driven by real-time elements. And I've more recently been into the 3D world and computer vision and machine learning. As well as I've open sourced some commonly used libraries that let creatives do things that they could not do before. Gives access to creatives to use really interesting technologies. Then I went to IDP at NYU, and I got a lot more into the whole creative technology aspect of things.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what ITP is, it's a program called the Interactive Telecommunications Program, which is a very kind of old school sounding name, but it's a program founded in the 70s at NYU in the art school at Tisch, which is about experimenting and finding creative uses for emerging technologies. So in the 70s, they were using like public access television and the new wave of portable video recording equipment. And then they've moved more recently into things like the blockchain and machine learning and computer vision and augmented reality, et cetera, et cetera. So this project falls somewhere in between all of that, but is very much inspired by the spirit of doing creative things with technology and creating tools and ways to make it easier to onboard creatives and artists into the world of doing creative things with technology. So as I mentioned, this will kind of follow the format of, we'll have like a 10, 15 minutes of presentation, kind of covering what brought us to this. And then we'll go actually experience Arium. Arium is the platform itself. So yeah, without further ado, so my background in theater was very much working on projects like this, which is to say large scale exhibition style theater pieces and arts exhibitions. And I think over the course of working on these projects, I just kind of began to develop a certain set of understandings. One is that the core experience of this is a shared experience. It's an audience of 1,000. It's not an audience of one. And that's one of the things that traditionally has separated online viewing from offline viewing. That it's a shared space, meaning a shared physical space if we're in the same room together, and that it's content in context, meaning that the artists, the producers, the directors and designers have spent a lot of effort finding ways to curate the context around the art. So if the art is a video, it's not just a video, it's a video in a room with some chairs around it, as in this particular case, on a raised plinth with red carpeting. It's like there's been a lot of effort made to set the stage for a particular art piece. And this is something that I think becomes very difficult to replicate online. So I don't know if any of you have heard of this famous case of the quote unquote Molotov Man. This was a photograph by Susan Meiselas of a Nicaraguan revolutionary, which became famous about 30 years after it was first published, or 40 years after it was first published, because it was reused by this artist, Joy Garnett. And there was a big legal fight between the original photographer, Susan Meiselas, and the reusing artist, Joy Garnett, because she was taking this image that was very specific to a certain context, to a certain historical context, and recontextualizing it to strip it of its meaning and provide a different meaning, which the original photographer found challenging. So one of the things about the internet is that it strips media or strips content, whatever that content is. If it's an arts content or media content, it's stripped of its context. So I just very briefly want to provide a framework for thinking about real-time interactivity. And by real-time interactivity, I mean what we're doing now, but I also mean a lot of the other ways that we interact with one another online. So if you have been on the internet recently, you've probably engaged with one of these many applications, which all fall under the rough header of connected experiences or real-time connected experiences. And it's important to be able to kind of parse them out a little bit. And so if you think back to middle school English, where you did who, what, where, why, when, that's kind of the rubric that I follow for thinking about these experiences. So when is how is time experienced in this interaction? So if it's more asynchronous, meaning there's a gap in time between when I interact with it and when you interact with it, it's something like Instagram. If there's something like Instagram stories, that's more close in time from when I interact to when you interact. And then of course, something like Instagram Live is much less of a delay in time. And then Zoom, we're talking now, quote unquote, synchronously. So Arium, this platform we're building, is a synchronous interaction. Who does the interaction serve? So these are a random scattering of applications, which roughly serve either friends and family, or colleagues in a work context, or strangers. So Arium has been used to serve all three of these different categories. What is actually shared between all the participants? Is it data like a text message or like a Google Doc? Is it voice like a phone call or various other new applications that are coming out? Or is it just video, or is it more likely some combination of all of these? Arium, again, provides some combination of all of these. We're sharing both voice, video, and data. And finally, where does the interaction take place? Is it in a 2D grid of videos, or is it in a 3D spatialized environment, or is it something like email, where how you look at an email will probably not look the same as how I look at an email. You may use Gmail and I may use Apple Mail, and someone else may use a phone. So this is different interfaces for the same data. And finally, why are these participants using this tool? Is it toward the end of collaborating and doing shared work together? Is it for performance? Is it for casual meetings? Or any of a number of purposes? So there's a bunch of other metrics you can think about dividing these real-time connected experiences, but we won't really go into those now. I just want to start with describing Arium as started with a very clear need, which was last March. Dan and I were working as researchers at this program, the Interactive Telecommunications program, which is a very social place. These are some photos from the types of, this is the floor, the physical plant of the graduate program. And it's a program where experimenting with technology is driven by an atmosphere of spending all night working together and actually showing our work together, collaborating, knowledge sharing. All of that happens because we're linked to this physical plant. And so last March, when we went remote, we were having difficulty replicating this type of environment in a remote context in Zoom. So specifically, what we were trying to replicate is a big student showcase that happened. So this is a showcase of several hundred students and faculty members and alumni, community members, et cetera. And what we were trying to replicate was not just the practical needs of showcasing content, but also these emotional needs of belonging to a community, feeling like you are doing something together with your peers, a sense of spontaneity, of fun, of being able to explore and exchange ideas with one another. And of course, just to still fulfill the needs of sharing your projects if you're a student and networking with alumni and whatnot. So we ended up building our own platform. That's the long and short of this story. And the reasons for that were that we felt that many-to-many interactions just don't work on traditional video chat. Something like Zoom works for up to maybe 6 or 8 people. And then when you get 20 or 30 or 40 people, it just doesn't work in terms of facilitating exciting, engaging, and natural interactions. You end up having to put a lot of work into the facilitation of those interactions as a host in terms of creating the various breakout rooms and whatnot. And we wanted to replicate this many-to-many interaction. We looked at platforms like Mozilla Hubs and various other quote-unquote avatar-based VR applications, but we felt that these really didn't replicate a human experience of being together in a space. And finally, we looked at sort of traditional content sharing tools, website builders, Squarespace, media tools, but it was hard to create a shared experience around this content. You could have the content and you could curate the content really well, but you didn't have a shared experience around this content. So I'll just show you a few photos from the very, very early prototypes before we actually end up going on a field trip into Arium of today. This is a photo from, I think, about a week into the pandemic, when I was experimenting with the idea of taking video chat and bringing it into a 3D context. I sort of scaled that up a little bit and started adding in a server backend and various other aspects, including the actual physical plant of our program. We then, because it was early in the pandemic, decided to invite 80 or 90 people and say, let's see how this works. And it turned out to work quite well, because we lucked out, I think, a little bit there. This is what I was seeing most of the time, kind of cringing and looking at the server and hoping nothing would break. And then Dan got involved in a major way, which helped with his incredible experience with building applications, helped make it conform to all the modern web standards and be accessible on a variety of devices, and also crucially explore different content sharing possibilities within the platform. So here you can see someone live streaming this high definition widescreen video, and we have this collective viewing experience around this video. So we started to get a little bit of traction at this point and attention from people wanting to hold events in unique ways. One of our first customers was a group at the MIT Media Lab that decided they wanted to build a space like this. So we worked with them to build out a custom space for this particular initiative. And over the last 6 months, they've continued to use it. I think they're actually using it for an event right now. And that is a very truncated version of what brings us to today. And today we have a web application. We have a lot of people working with us, and to create ways for creatives, for artists, to showcase and create shared experiences around content online. So I'll just briefly show a video before we hop into the space. To share the core mechanics of this platform are that there is a 3D rendered environment, sort of like a video game, that there is positional audio, meaning as you get further from someone, they get quieter. And what this allows is a free flow between conversations. You can move into one conversation, move into another very freely. It also allows a much higher capacity. So you can have 100 people in a room. You can have several rooms of 300, 400 people, all within the browser. And I think as a platform, what we're building out is tools for hosts to customize their space to match the needs of their event or organization. So this is from an event we did for New York City's Open Data Week. And by customize, we mean add photos, videos, 3D models, NFT collectibles is something we've had a lot of requests for recently. Be able to live stream, share content, and broadcast through various channels to all of the guests. And for a guest, the guest experience is that you are able to freely navigate this 3D rendered environment and communicate with one another directly using your audio and your webcam video. I'll just show a little bit more from this particular event so that you can get a sense of the way that people can naturally cluster and group into different conversations within a 3D space.
When you're broadcasting like that, can people still talk to each other?
Yes.
So like the ideal situation is by the screen, it's really loud, and we make everyone by the screen quiet so that there's no feedback. But if the sound gets from the screen gets quieter the farther away you are from it. So it could be like at a real event where there's like a main audience, and then you could be like on the side in a side area. You can still kind of hear what's going on the screen in the background, but you can still have a conversation with someone. So you can like freely go up to hear it more loudly, or go to the side and like, or if there's music playing, if there's like a concert or something, and it could be like you're at the bar, you're like having a conversation with someone at the bar and you hear the music in the background.
That's super awesome. I had a friend who attended one of these events, and she said that like for the first time in a while, she got like social anxiety because it was so much like being in person. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it has a lot of the elements. Like everyone's always like, oh, this is like being at a real event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any other questions before we kind of just hop into it?
Yeah, I have a question, Aidan. The items you're exhibiting, right? Are they flat, like photos? Is there an
There's,
aspect to the item, like a sculpture? What?
yeah, so you can, people can embed videos or 3D models. So you can upload a 3D model that even has an animation on it. So it depends on what the person uploads, but you can also upload a 3D piece of furniture. Or I think the examples from the videos you showed, it was all flat, but yeah, someone could upload something that's 3D.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I'm asking is I belong to a group called Origami USA, which is headquarters in New York City. And it's the American Origami Society. Every year we have a big convention. In fact, one of the biggest conferences, origami conferences in the world. And this year it's going to be virtual. And one of the things that happens during the convention is that we usually have an exhibit. Everyone brings their best models and shows them off in the exhibit area, which this year, obviously, we're not going to have. This is like the kind of application that could work really well for that. What I would mainly have, though, would be nice photos of the models that people would send in, obviously, because
Yeah, you could do photos or videos. People could do photos or videos. They could like take a really nice video, like going around it, a really high definition video.
so
too.
that would be an option for some of our members.
Yeah.
Some work they could video and do like a 3D video.
Yeah, I'll also mention a couple things. One is the most recent iPhone. Someone just showed me the most recent iPhone allows you to take 3D model captures from the phone directly. So within 30 seconds, you can get a pretty decent model of a particular object.
Huh. Okay.
So for those members that have those iPhones or have a friend with those iPhones, you'd be able to actually capture a 3D model. And then the second thing is there's an interesting approach we've seen, which is actually taking 2D images, but placing them in 3D space such that something looks 3D. So for instance, someone replicated an entire block on the Lower East Side by taking images from each building and then just putting them next to each other and placing them in space so that you could move around within that block.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, yeah, I get that.
So if you took images from multiple sides of the model and placed them around the sides of a block, you kind of get that cheap replication of 3D.
So you could do a front picture, a left picture, a right picture, a behind picture, a top picture, and then put it like in a cube and then display it that way. It's a great idea.
One approach.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
One of the other things that I think is actually not shown in there is you can have multiple people working on a space, editing it at the same time. So let's say you have a bunch of people showing their own work. You could actually have everyone in there like placing their own work. And that's actually a really fun way of experiencing the platform when everyone's collaborating together.
That's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
We also have a question in the chat. Can you compare Arium with Microsoft Mesh?
I have not used Microsoft Mesh. Dan, have you used Microsoft Mesh?
No, I'm curious what it is. I think the thing we more compare ourselves to, that the similar thing would be like Mozilla Hubs or potentially like CryptoVoxels or Decentraland, but
yeah, so Microsoft Mesh also seems to perhaps be device, as in you need one of the augmented reality, mixed reality devices, headsets. And we've, throughout this, specifically not focused on supporting virtual reality headsets because they are just such a big barrier to entry. Most people don't have them. The people who have them are not necessarily going to put them on for a 30-minute event. They're probably more likely to put them on if they've like created a specific experience, but it's just such a big barrier to entry.
And I mean, VR can be like a really, really nice experience for viewing really great content in a very high resolution. And that's can be really good for something if you want to have like a really high definition art show. But I think for us, it's really actually important to see the person's face, and you can't do that with a VR headset. You can only do it with basically a webcam. So, maybe our experience and won't be like the super high fidelity VR experience, but you will get more of like the human aspect of being in an experience with other people.
All right, so we can go on a little field trip. I guess there's 3 things I want to say before we enter, which is it works best on the Google Chrome browser. Please use headphones if you've got them. And the third thing is you'll be asked to allow for webcam access. So please do allow that.
And if you're using a webcam here, you should disable the webcam here.